Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our annual Matric Mastery webinar. My name is Danica Saunders. I'm the event coordinator for SACAP, and I will be your host this morning. Joining us this morning, we have a range of wonderful speakers, all ready to share their knowledge and how to assist, and all their knowledge on how to assist you as matriculants and parents of matriculants in the most supportive and conducive ways possible. First up, we have Jogini Packery, who is the head of campus at the SACAP Johannesburg campus. She is a counseling psychologist with a keen interest in adolescent and young adult development, with a particular focus on identity development and adjustment to adversity. She has an occupational interest in employee well-being and transformation in the workplace. Next, we have Dr. Genevieve de Silva, who is an educational psychologist in Eastern Cape, South Africa. She is passionate about healthy family functioning, child development, and learning. She equips parents, teachers, child development, and mental health professionals as an author, speaker, lecturer, and practitioner. Genevieve seeks to identify and promote unique potential in her clients and students through social, emotional, and practical skills development. And then finally, we have Jean-Pierre Moller, who has a master's degree in educational psychology, and he is registered with SACE and the HPCSA governing bodies. He is currently a full-time educator at the SACAP Johannesburg campus and has taught and practiced at numerous schools before. He presented numerous workshops and trainings on platforms like the Daily Sun, ENCA, and for the Gauteng Department of Education. Jean-Pierre is a firm believer in if students can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. And now, without any further ado, I will be handing over to Jogini. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here as a part of this important discussion on matric mastery. We all know that the matric year can be incredibly stressful for both students and parents. But with the right strategies, it can also be a time for growth, achievement, and some fun. Today, I'll be focusing on two key areas. Firstly, debunking some common study myths that may be causing some unnecessary stress. And secondly, facilitating what works and what doesn't work for various learners and parents. So without further ado, let's tackle one of the biggest myths. Dan, thank you. The idea that cramming is an effective study strategy is one of our biggest myths. Research constantly shows that cramming leads to short-term retention of information, but it doesn't support long-term understanding. This is because cramming overloads the brain without giving it time to properly process and integrate the information. While cramming the night before might allow you to recall important information within a short space of time, coupled with nervousness and a little bit of panic that is normal within an exam situation, it could lead to disastrous outcomes. It could also have you feeling like you've forgotten everything you've learned. So what is a practical tip that we could use instead of cramming? So instead of cramming, we can encourage spaced repetition. Spaced repetition might be something new to some of you, but it is simply a technique where you review material at increasing intervals over time. For example, study a topic today and then review it again tomorrow, and perhaps test yourself a day after. This method reinforces your memory and understanding far more effectively than cramming the night before. So what we want to essentially aim for is understanding the concepts that we are studying, rather than trying to commit it into memory for simple recall at a later stage. Another common myth that I'll be chatting to you guys about this morning is that more study time will automatically output better results. And this is quite a concerning myth and a misconception, because while it's important to dedicate sufficient time to studying, quality does trump quantity. Studying for hours on end without breaks can lead to cognitive fatigue, and that can diminish your ability to retain information. So let's pause here for a moment and look at cramming as not just an ineffective, but a time-pressured technique for studying. And when we're talking about studying, it's important that we understand what studying in itself means. We are learning information so that we can integrate it into our understanding, but also then rely on that information to apply it in our everyday lives, not just in the exam room space. So it does require us to not just be able to repeat, but be able to make sense of and be able to interpret in a way that is meaningful. Then there's the word cognitive fatigue. Now, what really does this mean? Simply put, cognitive fatigue is the tiredness of the mind when you've been cramming and pushing in information and you feel that you just no longer can. It is important that you listen to your body. It's important that you pay attention to these messages that your body is sending you. One practical tip that you can use to avoid cognitive fatigue is something known as the Pomodoro technique. This is an excellent way to manage study time effectively. It involves studying for 25 minutes, followed by a 5-minute break. After 4 sessions, you can take a longer break of about 15 to 30 minutes. So let's think about this practically. You will have 4 25-minute sessions, and in between each of it, you will have a 5-minute break. So it will work in slots of 30 minutes each. It's important to have a plan when going into a Pomodoro session. It's important to have some sort of a goal. Today, I want to cover chapter 1 and 2. I think I can do this with one Pomodoro session, which means chapter 1 will be the first 2 slots and chapter 2 will be the second 2 slots. When I take a bigger break, I will then be coming back to a second Pomodoro session, but I'll be changing my subjects. And this is how you should use your calendar to help you block off how you will be dedicating your time. So one Pomodoro, if it's 4 sessions that are 25 minutes each with a 5-minute break in between, you're looking at about 2 hours per sitting. So this technique helps you maintain focus, but it also helps keep your brain fresh. In the 5 minutes, it's important that you stay away from distractions, because going onto social media, we all know, is not going to be for 5 minutes. So it is helpful if you switch off any social media devices, keep them in a different room, but keep them out of sight. What you can do in your 5-minute break is go for a walk, do some stretch exercises, get some water or a healthy snack. Right? So here for parents, it's important to understand that your child needs breaks and that pushing them to study for longer isn't always the best strategy. Where we can be supportive in a process like this is ensuring that healthy snacks are available in the home, but also ensuring that your child, sometimes learners can be very motivated and they want to push through, but we have to encourage them to have a balanced study session and to make sure that at the end of the day, they're also getting enough sleep, they're getting enough exercise and enough downtime. If you've planned your day to meet the goals of your study sessions, Make sure that you reward yourself. Make sure that you celebrate the wins of that day. And that could look like listening to your favorite music, having a hot shower, or relaxing in the bath. It can also look like watching a movie or your favorite series, but make sure that you have a wind down time before you go to bed to encourage healthy sleeping habits as well. So I'm going to move on from that myth to myth number 3. And this one is the misconception that you need to study in complete silence. Now, I recall this from my childhood, where music was a distraction, as seen by my parents' generation. But this is another myth, that you need complete silence to study effectively. While this may be true for some, this is not universal. And it's important as parents to understand that your child might not be tapping into the same study techniques as you. So some learners actually perform better when there's a bit of background noise or soft music. It can help them focus, and it can also help reduce feelings of isolation or stress. It can be relaxing. Classical music tends to be one of the common ones, but there's also meditation music that is helpful for study sessions, which are available on YouTube. And there are cases where the best absorption of information happens when there's different types of music. Personally, if the music I'm listening to has words in it, it takes me down a completely different path. But I do understand that for someone else, that might be the best way to assimilate into the information processes that exist already. So a practical tip for managing your space, your study space. Like we said, we're putting distractive devices that have social media in a different room. We're getting rid of the distractions, but we also need to make sure that the learning environment is conducive for learning. And sometimes that looks like having a little bit of background music. We can also experiment with different environments to see what works best. If background music is or background noise is helpful, we can also try studying in a cafe, or we can study with some ambient noise apps that are available. We can also play soft sounds like rain or ocean waves or chirping birds. So it's literally whatever works best for you. If you find music helps, you can consider instrumental tracks to avoid the distractions of lyrics, like I do, or you can find what works well for you. It is important to be honest with yourself at this point. Okay. The fourth myth speaks about the breaks that we mentioned earlier. And this is to emphasize how important it is to, when we are planning and when we are scheduling our study sessions, to ensure that we are balancing the utilization of our brains, but the rest of our brains as well. The myth that you should study for long periods without breaks is counterproductive. Our brains need time to rest. It needs time to consolidate the information that you have taken in. Without breaks, you are likely to experience diminishing returns in terms of productivity and retention. A helpful practical tip is to incorporate short breaks and regular breaks into your study routine. So this is quite different from the Pomodoro technique. This is looking at your study session in totality. Right? This is where you're using breaks to relax, maybe also balancing some of your other responsibilities and other tasks that you have around the home. Even a 5-minute break every 30 minutes, like the Pomodoro technique, can help refresh your brain and boost productivity. But we also need to balance responsibilities that we have. And for everyone, that looks completely different. The fifth myth is that every subject requires the same study method. So here it's important that we emphasize that there's no one size fits all. This applies to different learners, that no two learners will be able to study most effectively the exact same way, but also that as a learner, you need to cultivate different skills, because the skills that will be useful for studying math work or studying literature essays is vastly different from effective skills needed for a module like physics or biology. So this idea that the same study methods works for every subject is a common misconception. Different subjects will often require different approaches. For an example, while flashcards might be great for memorizing historical dates, it may not be as effective for understanding complex mathematical concepts. That might require a test and a retest approach, where you practice, you maybe watch a tutorial video, or you go back to your teacher to work through an example, and then you have practice examples with the end goal that maybe tomorrow you will take a test, and that can be out of a study guidebook, but it also can be from past examples that you've covered in class, or it can be some that you create yourself. So you can tap into your creativity in ways that will be meaningful for you. Another tip is to tailor your study method. And an example of that is, like I said, to practice the math problems in science, but then to discuss essays for the subjects like humanities. There, study groups might be helpful, or studying in pairs might also be helpful. In that way, you can test your peer, and through testing, you're also integrating and taking in information for better understanding and retention. Flashcards are excellent for memorization, which is why it's recommended for speeches, it's recommended for historical dates and facts. This targeted approach ensures that you're studying the most effective way. Okay, so I'll be moving on to the second section now to talk about what works and what doesn't. Understanding different learning styles is very important. So let's start with the fact that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to studying. Each learner has a unique style and understanding, and this can make all the difference once we understand that. Some students are visual learners who benefit from mind maps, color-coded notes, and videos. Others might be auditory learners who remember information better when they discuss it out loud, or they listen to recordings of their own notes. So here we can see how devices can be helpful as a learning tool in the studying process. However, it must be met with discipline, because if you are recording on your phone and you're using your phone as a recourse process, make sure that your notifications or that your data and your Wi-Fi is switched off, so that you don't have incoming distractions while you're in that process. Right. Then there's kinesthetic learners who may be active, who may benefit from being active while studying, using techniques like getting up, moving around, writing on whiteboards, or even pages that are stuck on the walls throughout the house. Role playing is also another way that we can use movement to help us remember. Even walking while reciting notes tend to help. It might look like pacing, it might look a bit concerning, but if it works for you, do what works for you. If you're a visual learner, try using flashcards with images or diagrams. In my experience, I found this very helpful for subjects like biology, where you were looking at different structures and you were looking at the functions of those structures. I would redraw what I would see in my textbooks and work on my labelings, and I would then stick it up on the walls of my room. So it's the first thing I seen in the morning, it's the last thing I seen in the evening, and throughout the weeks leading up to final exams, I found that it was a lot more easier to remember the structure and the function elements, so I could focus my study sessions on the understanding building for that particular subject. Whereas auditory learners might benefit from recording themselves, reading their notes, and listening to them during a walk. This is also a very helpful way to practice and learn speeches. Kinesthetic learners, on the other hand, could benefit from teaching someone else what they've learned. Mock sessions. Anyone in the home, be it a parent, a sibling, or an extended family member, could be a great assistant in this role. And this makes studying more interactive and it makes learning more engaging. So we're tapping into various senses at the same time. So what doesn't work on the flip side is forcing a visual learner to sit through many hours of monotonous reading without engaging any visuals, or making a kinesthetic learner sit for extended periods can be extremely counterproductive. This misalignment of study methods with learning styles often leads to frustration and burnout. This misunderstanding can also lead to misdiagnosis of different behavioral challenges. So it is very important that we understand how our children would benefit from understanding their own learning style and how we could do better to understand those learning styles so that our support efforts are aligned with ways that are effective for them. Not what we did back at school, not what our teachers encouraged us to do, but what works best for them. So as parents, supporting your child means recognizing and accommodating these different learning styles. It's important to remember that your approach to supporting them can make a huge difference. Some students can thrive within a structured environment where study time is scheduled, accounted for each and every hour, and also monitored, while others might feel stifled by too much parental involvement and too much of a structure. They may need some flexibility. It is also useful to communicate with your child's teachers to understand how they approach the work best in class. These cues from the teachers or the educators could be helpful for integration at home. Okay, so some practical examples for parents is if your child is a visual learner, you might support them by helping them to set up a study space with a whiteboard or an available wall with the availability of large paper for drawing out their thoughts. This could be for mind mapping, this could be for diagrams, it could be for any creative way of expressing the work that they're engaging with. For an auditory learner, you could engage in a discussion about the subject, or even help them find podcasts or videos related to their curriculum. In doing so, you'd also be learning and being able to engage in what is being learned, which brings you closer to your child. It will help strengthen the bond under very stressful circumstances. If your child is a kinesthetic learner, encourage them to take study breaks where they can move around. Allow them to use fidget tools and stress balls while studying. Okay. So what doesn't work? Let's remember that it doesn't work to impose your own study habits on your child. Just because something worked for you or for another child in the same house, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for everyone. The key is flexibility and communication. Ask them what they need and be willing to adapt. So later on, you guys will hear more from Jean-Pierre on how to integrate AI into the learning processes. Remember, AI, like anything else in this world, can be useful, but can also be a challenge. Depends on how we think about it, how we approach it, and how we choose to use it. As parents, we can use AI if your child is struggling to grasp a concept that they've learned in class. You can also use it to prepare to help your children before you get to homework and study sessions. So this is some homework that you can be doing on your own. But AI can be used outside of the classroom space during the stressful time as well. It can be used to help navigate social and psychological challenges that your child might be experiencing, that you might feel is a little bit above your head and you want to get more information. It can also be used collaboratively with your child as a tool to explore career options for what decisions need to be made post-matric. But I will be leaving us there, and just a reminder that with the right strategies, you can make this year a year of growth and achievement for both students and parents. And we will now be moving on to Dr. Jen, who will be talking a little bit more about balance that is essential for the learning process to happen. Thank you, Dan. Dr. Jen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jogini, and welcome to all parents and to students that are here today. I really hope that today is helpful already. I've been taking notes because you are never too old to keep learning and never too young to keep learning. And so this morning, as we start, we're going to speak about cramming versus planning. And I wonder at this stage, maybe for some of you in matric, you're about to enter into your final exams, but I'm pretty sure if you're anything like I was in matric, you are also at the same time planning your matric holiday at the end of all this hard work. And when it comes to holidays, at some point we need to be packing and getting ready to go. And for anybody who's been away, I always find that when we pack last minute, when we start our holiday, it's incredibly stressful. But when we've planned in advance and we're able to pack what it is we need, when we get in the car to go, it feels like we're already on holiday from the beginning part. And there's something that comes to cramming versus planning that either can help us manage our stress levels or that increases our stress levels. And so already you've heard about the myth about cramming. And so what I'd love to do is we're going to shift from that idea of trying to get in as much as possible before the exams to being able to plan ahead. And as we think about planning, while we're doing that, we're going to be engaging in and helping us to start this journey on a good foot, a calm foot, and moving forward within that. And so the process we're going to work through is to think about our plan in terms of having a goal, a plan, steps that we can work out, the support that we need in this, and then to just dive into it. And of course, along the way, no matter where we go in life, there's always going to be challenges that come up or shifts or detours. So we're going to learn how to adapt as you go through that. And so as you go into the first element, before we even start our goals and planning and steps, I want to speak about understanding assessment. Because I think a lot of the times when we go into our exams, we have a lot of stress around them simply because we don't fully understand what assessments are for. And so whatever we think affects how we feel, and it affects how we approach and take action. And so understanding what assessments are for, and exams are a form of assessment, helps us in our approach to the exam and what lies ahead. And so the first thing we need to understand when it comes to assessment is that assessment is really just a measuring tool, much like a ruler or a scale or any other form of measurement that we use in life. We measure things so that we can understand more about it and to be able to compare it with other things. And so what we are doing with exams and assessments is we're measuring knowledge and also the ability to use that knowledge, apply that knowledge, analyze and adapt the knowledge. So exams are really there to say, what is it that you have learned over your 12 years of school and how are you able to use it? And are you able to adapt to this? And so it's here to help you and to tell you what is going on in terms of what you have been learning. It is not a measure of who you are as a person. It is not a measure of where you're going to go in the future. It is not a measure of how good you are in life or even what lies ahead for you in life. It's really a measure of this is what you've learned over time. This is what you've been able to take in, and this is how you're able to adapt and use it practically at this point in time. Measurement tells us where we're at, but it also allows us to know where we want to go. And so as we go into our goals and onto the next screen, we're going to see that when we sit down to study, we need to have goals in mind. And so if you have a look at this next slide, the first goal we want to have a look at before we even start working out our study plan or getting into our study plan, the first goal is when I study and when I do these exams, I need to identify for myself what knowledge I've gained. Because if I know what I've gained, well, I know what, when I do my exam, it should measure already what I know and what I've gained. And so over your schooling career, and as you've been practicing and as you've been learning, especially over the last 2 years, putting the final touches to the knowledge that you need for this set of exams, the question is, what do you know already and what skills have you already been able to take on board through this learning journey that you've been on? The second goal is that exams are there to measure in order to show other people outside of yourself what your knowledge is and what skills you have. And this is where the comparison takes place, because your external exams, especially when it comes to using your marks for university or for workplaces, or even when you're still in school, we are measuring, or institutions are measuring, because they need to know where are you at in comparison with others. And so it's important for you to know that the first thing is about what do I know and where am I at? But the second thing is, okay, where am I at in comparison with others? And the problem with comparison is that it can make us feel very small. But the other side of comparison, it helps us to know where we need to grow and keep on improving. If we are always at the top of our game and the top of everybody else, we cannot grow any further. We have become the lid. But if we put ourselves in a place where people are better than us and we are able to stretch and see how much more we can grow, we will continue to grow. And this is why matric exams tell us where we've come from, but it also sets us up for where we're going to go to as we go into university or into the workplace, where we're able to then learn new skills and adapt these skills as well. So if we know that the goal of measurement, the goal of studying is to identify knowledge and skills, and then to tell us where we're at, and help us to know that we can keep on growing, that is a much better view of why we need to get through the exams and how we can get through the exams positively and with a good attitude. And so if we go over into the next slide, at this point in time, you might be feeling, I don't know if I'm going to make it. You know what? If you've not done anything at all for the last 12 years in stats in class and literally done nothing, I'm sorry, but 1 month is not going to make a difference or help you in your exams, because you cannot cram 12 years of study into 1 month. But if you've been a diligent worker, even if it's not been 100% your best, but you've diligently been learning year in and year out. And for most people I work with, we always are learning, we always are growing. So you have learned something. You need to remember that you've got knowledge in you already. But what we're going to do is we're going to know where we are now, and we're going to say, where can I keep going to? And even in the short time, where can I increase in where I'm at? And so on the next slide, the top section says, learning is a lifelong journey. I want you to think about, as you go into the exams, you're not about to end your journey, and this is not the end of it all. This is just a next step into a lifelong love. If you are a learner and you keep on learning and growing, you're going to love life, because every day there's something new to grow, adapt, learn, challenge yourself, and grow in skills. And so as we're studying, this is what we want to ask ourselves. What knowledge do I already have? Do you understand what you've learned? And what new knowledge can you add at this time? And so in your study sessions, if you can identify, I know this information, I understand this, and I can actually say it in my own words. And if you are struggling to put it in your own words, ask AI to help you in a simpler version. What does this mean? Put it in simple words. When you get that understanding and say, oh, I get this, then you know that you've got this information. And then you can ask yourself, hey, in this short time, can I improve or increase my knowledge? So I didn't understand this section, but I can try and work on this section because these ones I've got and I understand. I will remember and do the memory so I can have it for the exams, but can I add on an extra chapter or an extra concept that I've been struggling with previously? And there's still time to build on that. In terms of our skills, we can ask ourselves, what skills do I already have? And we don't just want to pass exams for the knowledge, but actually we're learning skills in this. So writing exams gives you skills too. As you're writing exams, you are learning or increasing your memory and recall. You're learning how to plan. You're learning about endurance, and we need this for life. We're learning how to manage stress. We're learning how to critically think and adapt and communicate our needs, but also communicate our learning to whoever's marking. These are essential skills for life, not just exam skills. And so as you're going through your exams, you're actually learning how to navigate and manage life in general as well. So there's a bigger picture here, and you're not just wasting your time. And then the question is, what skills can I work on by studying? Then we can have a look at the marks. So because we're learning our knowledge, because we're increasing our skills, of course, you want to get good marks at the end of this. But remember, marks are just the readings of the measurement, okay? If you are constantly increasing your knowledge and increasing your skills, the likely outflow of that is an increase in marks because it's measuring what you know and measuring your skills. And so if we're just focused on getting good marks, we're actually missing the process that leads us to good marks, because good marks are a byproduct of the effort we're putting in and the increase that we are seeing as we're putting in that time and effort. Marks should not be your goal. Learning, adapting, and growing should be. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly run through those other steps so that I can give you some practical stuff to be able to increase in this area. All right, so already Jogini mentioned something about planning. So we're going to quickly go through that because she's put so much into what she had to say. But some things we can look at as we do our plan. The first thing would be to have our goal in mind. Okay, and so again, our goal, increase knowledge, increase skills. So what is it that you need to still go back over? Maybe there's something you need to put some time into understanding, or what skills is it that you need to work on, maybe in some of your practical subjects. And put down some measurables that you can actually aim towards. I want to be able to write this in my own words. I want to be able to answer this question paper and get so much right. I need to be able to do this maths problem and understand the process. So what are your measurable aims in that? And it is really good for you to say, you know, I want to maybe get a 60% or a 75%, but that tells you that you need to know a certain amount of the information. So do you know that? Measure it and you can see it. Then part of our plan is we need to plan with realistic time constraints in place, okay? We only have 24 hours in the day, so you can't study 48 hours worth of work. We have 5 weeks until final start. So again, you cannot put an entire year's worth of learning into only 5 weeks. You can review what you've learned, and you can maybe add 1 or 2 additional elements that you want to increase in. And then there's 6 weeks of exams. You only have 5 weeks to your first exam, but you have 11 weeks maybe till your last exam if you're writing in the last week. So you have time, sometimes more time or less time on your different subjects. And so planning around your time is helpful. Then part of planning, we need to work from rest. Because we cannot overwhelm ourselves or our brain. We're going to be exhausted. And we already heard about the cognitive fatigue. So plan and sleep. Make sure you're having a full night's rest. For teenagers, it should be between 8 to 10 hours. So if you're planning on only 5 hours, you're only giving your brain half of what it needs to function well. And if your brain is tired, that cognitive fatigue is going to set in so much quicker. So plan in your sleep, and your study time needs to be outside of your sleep time. Plan in nutrition, exercise, connection, and ways in which you can refresh yourself, because a healthy body gives you a healthy mind. A healthy emotional space and connecting with people gives us a healthy mind as well. So plan that in. And then make sure that you have measurable steps. So plan realistically. In all of your steps, make sure it's specific to the subject that you're working on. Have your focus times and breaks like we've already learned about in the Pomodoro clock. Review, try and do something new, and then practice in your different subjects. So each one will be different for the subject you're taking on. And then make sure in your measurable steps, if you're going to do a test, retest, or if you're going to work through a piece of information and discuss it with a parent or parents you're discussing with your kids, measure what you knew previously And then did you know more the next time you went through it? See if you are improving or where you need to spend extra time to improve. And then make sure, again, already mentioned previously in our practical steps, having our space ready, our resources ready, limiting our distractions, and then working through our plan. If we have a good plan, we can then trust the process. And so in our planning, if you start from the back and you work your way forward, this is my last exam, here's the plan for that second exam, and work backwards with your time constraints and what it is you want to do, you can actually put together a really good practical, tangible plan on paper that then you just need to work through. Okay. So if we go over to steps, here are some things I'm going to speak into that plan and how to put it together. So if we go over to steps, look at your different subjects, list the concepts you need to go through, and list the chapters you need to go through. Then take it to your timeline from the longest to the shortest. List the different exams on a calendar with dates, and then work backwards from there. If I need to get through this much in this amount of time, well, then I need to take quite big sections to get through that. If I have a lot of time and a little bit of work, I can put less time into this, okay? And then put it over time. Plan it in so that you can see where everything fits. Break it up and divide up the workload. You don't want to cram too much into too short a session. If we do it and review it over time, we're going to hold it in our long-term memory so much better. Then, do work in practice tests and exam. Make sure you work them into your plan. If you only have 5 days to study, 4 days should be reviewing, 1 day should be at least a practice exam, or 3 days of study, 1 practice exam, 1 review day so that you can work on the areas you know you didn't do well in your practice exam. So schedule it in. Don't just assume it's going to fit. Plan your daily schedule. So if you're at home studying, don't just think, oh, I have all the time in the world. Plan in a daily schedule and stick to the routine. What time are you waking up? What time are you getting started on your day? What time are your breaks? What are you going to do in between in terms of rest, relaxation, and exercise? All right. And then make extra time for more challenging subjects. We all have strengths and weaknesses. So spend time where you need the time, and where you need less time, put less time in there. Don't throw away your time. Time is a valuable resource. We don't get it back. And then ask for help. Sometimes we want to just do this on our own, but the best way is always to ask for help. So get into a study group with people that are passionate about the subject, do tutorials online or where your teachers are making that available. Speak to your teachers. Ma'am, I struggle with this. Why? What am I missing? Can you assist me? And speak to your parents. Let them come alongside you, and parents come alongside your kids in the process. And then if we go on to support, part of asking for help is getting the support we need. And so when we think about support, it's not just in the form of people, but it's the support that we need in our own wholeness of who we are to be able to get through this. And so support looks at mental health, physical health, and emotional health. When our body and our mind and our heart are all working together, we are at our strongest and we can move forward in this. And so focus on what do you need in terms of your mental well-being? That means your mind and what we're thinking. Focus on one thing at a time. Don't try and do everything in one go. So if you have a plan, just work through the plan and trust the process. Do what you need to do today and trust that what's coming tomorrow will be taken care of on that day. If we're worrying in advance, we have no space in our mind to do what we need to do today. So work your plan and trust the process. Focus on one thing at a time. Breathe. Whenever you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, just pause and breathe. If you have a watch that talks to you, a smartwatch, it's helpful. It usually has a breathing app on it, or focus breaks or what have you, that it can just give you a little reminder, stop, stand, deep breath. It's amazing when we take a deep breath, we're able to calm our entire system so that we can focus again. Take a walk if you need to. Be present in the moment. Don't worry about what's coming. I know you're looking forward to matric holiday. I know you can't wait for things to go over, or you're worried about a specific test. Be present in the moment. Stick with what you need to do right now. Limit your distractions, especially your technology distractions, but even people distractions, trying to sort out your desk distractions. Limit your decisions. Again, this leads to cognitive fatigue. If you've already decided what you're going to do today, the decision's made, you don't have to think about it. And so it eases up space for you to do what you need to do instead of having to decide what you're going to tackle today. Rest your brain and use boosting your body techniques in the breaks. Go for a walk, do some sit-ups, some jumps, breathe deeply, have some cold water. And that moves into physical health here. Prioritize your sleep, drink lots of water, get good nutrition, move and stretch in your breaks, get some sun, get outside. It's coming into summer. Go get some sun, rest your eyes. This I learned from an optometrist, and I'm so grateful. When we're so busy focusing, our eyes get tired. And so for every 20 minutes, we need a 20-second break. And so if you've been doing your Pomodoro, at the end of it, just sit and close your eyes for a minute or two. And it's amazing the rest your eyes get, you're able to then refocus. Sometimes we see that our eyes get a bit blurry. Your eyes are tired. Stop, close, stand up, take a break, and rest your eyes. And then make sure you do some exercise. And if you're not an exercise person like me, that's okay. Just taking a walk or doing some stretches, some yoga stretches are great. But when we exercise and move our body, it gives us these happy hormones called endorphins. You need them to keep your mental health going and keeping you excited and motivated. So do that. And then on the emotional health side, be kind to yourself. Don't tell yourself you can't. Tell yourself you're going to put in the effort. Don't tell yourself, I'll never get this. Tell yourself, I haven't got it yet. Yet is the most beautiful word that we have, because it means that there's still time to come, and learning is a lifelong process. You've still got time to keep learning. Then what you believe, you live. So if you believe you can't, it's true. If you believe you can, it's true. If you believe that if you practice and take steps on your plan and trust the process, it's true. All right. What we believe, we end up living. So watch what you're thinking. Be kind to yourself. Don't put yourself down. Tell yourself, I'm going to give my best. I'm going to try. I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask for help if I need to. Be kind to yourself. And then part of the process is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, identify what you feel. And if you're struggling, go talk to a parent. Let them help you. Why are you anxious? Why are you worried? Why are you upset? Are you maybe just tired, but it feels like anxiety? Let them have a chat with you. Once we talk about things, we're able to actually get a handle on what's going on, and they can give us perspective. That helps us to then shift our self-talk from an overwhelming I can't to an, hey, right now I'm just feeling tired, but after a break, I'm going to have energy and I can try the next step, not taking everything on at a time. And then let me encourage you, connect with real people in tangible ways. We live in a digital world, but there is nothing like real, tangible, real life people in our space, having a conversation, giving us a hug. Our bodies want to connect. And so just having a person in your space gives you so much love in the moment, and that helps us go. And so do that and make time for fun in between. We need some fun. We need some laughter to keep us going. Okay. And then parents, just some quick tips for you. Listen with empathy and understanding when your kids do say, Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you. Just listen. You don't have to fix. Just listen and be like, I hear where you're at. How can I help you? Help them to refocus on now and whatever the next step is, not 500 steps down the line. Be reminding them of their healthy habits. Hey, have you had something to drink? Hey, grab an apple. Did you eat lunch today? Did you go for a walk? So just remind them of healthy habits. Provide limits with love. You know, sometimes our teens want to do this, 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 and this. And sometimes we need to be like, hey, you can't go to 5 things this weekend, but you can go to 1. At the end of this, you can go to 5 things again. But right now, let's focus on what's important. Why? Because this is important. And you overwhelm yourself with too much partying, and then you're tired. So limit that, but we'll do this. And so it's out of love and understanding to one another. Remember our goals versus our products. The goal is, what am I learning and what skills am I developing? Not so much worries about marks. When knowledge and skills increase, marks increase. So focus on the goal, knowledge and skills. And if we put in the effort, the byproduct comes through in the marks. And then encourage effort and adaptability, because every time we put in effort, and when we adapt and change and learn and shift, that is learning, that is growth. And so encourage your kids in that. Have you put in the effort? Have you put in your best? This is not working out. Let's try something new, and you know your kids are going to grow. Remember, lifelong learning, it's not just about the marks now, it's the skills we're taking forward. So work the plan and trust the process. And you'll see that on the next slide as we have these people studying in their study groups. Work the plan, trust the process. And then I'm literally in just 2 minutes going to run through how do we adapt when things don't go our way. So when we run out of time on a day, or we don't get through everything, or when somebody pitches up unannounced, reassess your plan at the end of every week and adapt where you need to for the upcoming week. If something is more challenging, add extra time to it. If something is less challenging, take that time and put it into the more challenging one. If you find that you are procrastinating or your kids are procrastinating, the question is why? It's usually an avoidance technique. So what are we trying to avoid? Are we feeling overwhelmed? Are we feeling like we can't do something? Procrastination is avoidance. So ask for help, because that is probably what you're trying to avoid, whatever's on the other side of that. External accountability is great. Make sure somebody else knows your plan, like your parents, so that they can help you stick to it, because sometimes we can be our own worst enemies. So somebody who loves you can help you. Did you get through this today? Okay, we didn't. How are we going to fit it into our plan later on? Go back to the top when we're reassessing. All right, make sure you mark your practice test. Don't just do it and then be like, oh, I've done it. Mark it and see where you need to increase your skill, and then keep on working in that area. Strengthen your strengths, because they're the ones that are going to really shine for you. In your weaknesses, don't try and make them strengths, but do increase them so you don't trip over them. Okay, so you may not be an 80% in maths. Maybe you're a 40%er. You know what? Aim for a 45. Increase yourself, but don't try and aim for an 80. It's not your strength. But if something is your strength and you're getting 80s, aim for 85. It's brilliant. So keep on increasing, but don't try and turn your weaknesses into strengths. And then change it up. Use different techniques you've already heard. Read, listen, draw pictures, have discussions, use mind maps. Whatever works for you in terms of your learning style, get into it. I hope that's helpful. And we're going to hand it over to Jean-Pierre, and he's going to talk about AI and how do we use this in this day and time. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Doc and Jogini, for starting us off with such information that we can use. And I'm just going to now add some tools on how to apply everything that they've said already. So I say from chalk and talk to AI infinity and beyond. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, let's go and time travel with me. Okay, all the matrics, get your parents in, strap in. Here we go. We're ready for the ride. So what is AI? So artificial intelligence, or AI, refers to the ability of machines to imitate human intelligences and perform. So what do we want to do? We want to use AI as something to add to our learning, not to rely on it and to depend on it. Because one day you're going to get paid for your skills and for your knowledge. A robot should not replace you in your workplace one day. And that is what's going to make you unique. So therefore, we want to use AI to support us, to learn from it, but not to rely on it and to depend on it. So I'm going to give you some resources that you guys can use when you are now preparing for your matric exams. So there are some free reading books in all 11 South African languages. Yes, the same book in all 11 languages on Nali Bali if you want to learn some South African languages. You can go and look at the learning and teaching support material from Western Cape Education Department. It is incredible, and it can really just support you in what the teacher taught you. Maybe you forgot what they taught or didn't understand it. Go and see how this platform explains it on the curriculum that you are studying in. And then Via Africa has some free study guides. If you have math and science, Siavula has free study guides online. The curriculum past exams are on Tutong with the memorandums, just as Dr. Silva told us, that you can use that and then mark yourself afterwards. But don't look at the memo and afterwards then just say, oh yeah, no, I knew the work, but you didn't really. So put the memo away, do it, and then mark it later. Okay, and then the curriculum and policies, if the parents want to know more about it or have some extra resources, can be found on Tutong's website from the Department of Education. So just so that you guys know, both teachers and parents express concerns about AI's potential to replace genuine human connection. And that's why, as Dr. De Silva said, let the parents still ask the students some questions afterwards of the work that they studied to see if they understand or not. We are here to try and support the kids, and we do not want to break the bond that is there between parents and students. But if the parents don't have time now currently in the day before the exam is written, or whatever the case may be, because we have to have works and jobs and so on, then you can, for example, ask the AI to create multiple choice questions for you on the content that the student have studied. It can make flashcards and a lot of things that we're going to get into today. But also teachers then say that they think that AI will promote more inclusive classroom and close educational gaps. So here's where we go, where Jogini said that one size does not fit all. And we want you guys to use the AI to cater for you, the individual, the person who has to study, in a way that you need it. Because if you don't like that cuisine, get a different cuisine. That's the same thing that we're going to go into the studying methods. So on the next slide, I'm talking about experiential learning. So some overseas curriculum are going to adapt a lot now to let the kids experiment more, because then they can learn through seeing, through experiencing. And that is such a creative way where kids can feel involved while they learn and see the purpose of what they learn and how it's going to be played out in reality after school. So it's really interesting if you can then ask the AI to create you a story of where am I going to use this work in real life one day? Because what if you remember that section C with the long questions? What if in that question they ask you, please apply the knowledge that you did, that you studied in this scenario, and then you will be able to do it. And that's what we actually want you guys to do, to take that knowledge and to be able to apply it one day. So make a pact with yourself and say, in this time period, I want to study the following content. A little prep before, because the better you prepare, the less anxious you will be. Mini debrief. So if you didn't understand something, how can you get more information? Can you watch a YouTube video on it? Can you go watch a TED Talks on it? Can you ask your parents about it? So have a way to fill on if there are any gaps that you had. When and where is the best way for you to study? Is it in a quiet area? Is it walking around while you study? Is it by listening to music while you study, as Jogini said? A personal time schedule is good. Add study methods that you enjoy. Take regular breaks, please, and don't be afraid to ask. Okay, so now I'm not going to let us watch the video on the next slide, but it's where Hannah Montana sings the bone dance. You guys can just Google it, Hannah Montana bone dance, and she learned the bones in the body through a song. So you can integrate many numerous things, because she's dancing in this, she's singing in it, and she adapted it to one of her original songs. And you can do that with any content, or ask an AI to do it for you, to create a visual for you on the content, to create a song for you on the content, to create a poem on the content for you. So that's what we want you guys to do, because we want you to use more of your senses in your brain, because the more senses that we use, the more focus we experience, and the more we put in our long-term memory. So if you cram it in, you can save it in your short-term memory for up to about 70%, studies say. However, if you use more of your senses, if that is what you want, and we will see now through the research of what people use to study what techniques, but then if you use the techniques that works for you, and you get enough rest, during that rest period, your brain stores it into the long-term memory. And that's where we want you to recall it again in your first year next year when you're at university, or at college, or at work. We have to apply the knowledge that you learned at school. So in the next slide, you will see the areas of the brain. So I want you guys to use as many parts if that is what you want and the way that you like to study. Because here you can see that, for example, the frontal lobe, we have problem solving, emotional traits, speaking. So what I would do, for example, is I would take a piece that I had to study, let's say, for example, for dramatic art, and I will look in the mirror and I will use emotion and I will say it out loud in a different tone of voice, and I will read it to see it, see the visual face and the emotional expressions on my face. And in that hearing what I read out loud, I use more areas of my brain so that I can remember it more. And when I make an error, I will be like, oh, nee, why did I make that error? And I'll remember that I got angry at that error, and next time I will correct it because I know I should fix that error. Okay, so we are allowed to make mistakes. That's how we learn. But use as many parts of our brains as we can. And then just a fun fact, the prefrontal cortex of your brain actually develops between the age of 23 to 25. And yes, it is a bit dependent on gender. But while saying that, this is your problem solving skills. And that's also why the alcohol age restrictions are as high as it is. So please, people, be responsible while you study. On the next slide, you will see, and you guys are going to go for your learners now. So I said, I see with my hands. It's a saying that my mom always used, where she said when she goes clothing shopping, she has to feel the quality and see the quality because she sees with her hands. But when you guys go for your learners now, you will just realize when you put the music off or the radio off, you park better. I wonder why. So we want you guys to multitask. If, for example, you have tendencies of ADHD, or if you learn in a kinesthetic way. However, if that's not your way of learning, then minimize the senses that you use. For example, sit at the same place with no other distractions around you, a calm area with nothing on the walls, that you can sit and focus and only focus on one sense at a time, if that is what you need. Because otherwise, your attention is going to go and you're going to forget what you were supposed to read. And also with that, if you need to, and you think of something else, for example, of what's happening this weekend, or what my friends are doing now, or I have to prepare something for sport training later, please write it down somewhere that you can later get back to that to-do list. But still, now, in this moment, be present and focus on the work that you have to study. So this brings me to the next stats that I'm going to bring to you guys. So in 2009, you guys can see here how many students were only visual, how many only auditory, how many were reading and writing, how many were kinesthetic and moving, while some others were multi-modal that integrated more than one of the study techniques at a time. And therefore, parents, if your child only prefers one of it, it is fine. These students can still achieve high marks. They do not need to integrate more than one at a time. However, for most of the students, they do prefer to integrate more than one at a time. For example, reading out loud, doing the role play, and the things that Jogini has mentioned. And here are just some ways that you guys can integrate each one of them. For example, make a chart or a pie graph or a picture or PowerPoints. And you can even ask an AI to create a PowerPoint or flashcards for you. Read and write. So how to summarize a lengthy textbook. And this one, guys, is a good tip for next year when you go to college or university. Some of my books were over 4,000 pages each. And you can't study that in the amount of time that they give you. So you ask the AI to summarize it for you. And then from there, you learn the summary and make it your own. Auditory, read out loud, verbal instructions, and kinesthetic. And so walk around while you read, hands-on, try it practical, make an experiment to experiment it. So why do I say all of this and where does it come from? So we base it on the multiple intelligences. That's on the next slide. So in the multiple intelligences, some of us learn with music or making the work a song. Bodily kinesthetic while moving. So literally for life sciences, one of the students in my class literally did the movements when they had to remember which muscle moves when, for example, an athlete had to start up. So that's, for example, how she remembered it, by moving and doing different dance cues. Make the work your own, because you can do it in words or in whatever way that you understand it. And if you understand your work, you will be able to explain it to a grade 1 on a level that grade 1 will understand you. And that's what where we want to get to, that they will understand what you say on their level, but you have all the content and knowledge and you understand it so well that you can take that knowledge and give it over to the next generation. So benefits of online and AI learning, even in higher education, is, for example, it is student-centered, so you can make it the way that you want to and prefer. There are better opportunities out there if you use it in the right way. It is cost-effective. There are global knowledge, accessibility anytime. There are even online tutors for you for free, where you can ask the chatbot to help you and to guide you through some of the work or to explain a certain topic for you. And people, the one that we all were used to in the old days were Google. It's not outdated. Google is still there. So still ask Google some questions. It can still help you. Benefit of AI, we can also now use it to create even learning programs. So teachers can also use this to create a course content and a lesson plan for them. So it really helps and enhances learning efficiency. And that's what we want to do. So now in 2015, on the next slide, you can see how different people use different skills to study. When we then go to the next slide, it's 2017 and 2016 stats. So first 2016 stats. And lastly, we can look at 2017 stats. And what all of these stats say that most people prefer to integrate more than one method or module of studying. And what all of them say through all of these years' research is that you can use it at school, but also after school. So it's just something that I thought was to show that today's webinar was really based on statistics of what was researched and not just our own opinions as people who have studied before. So each unique individual should find a learning style that is connected to the most appealing domain of the multiple intelligences to discover what is the most effective for them. However, it suggests to use multi-module learning style to activate many senses that incorporates activation of numerous brain regions at the same time. Multimodal learning that then uses several of our senses, visual, auditory, and aesthetic. And lastly, cognitive learning theory suggests that when learners are actively involved in their own learning, they retain more of their training. So multimodal assigning are likely to create better results. So even if you ask the AI to summarize work for you, use a pen to still underline or highlight or to make notes on that summary to make it your own. So there are memory games that you guys can play on the next slide that you can use is online to improve your memory. And adults, you can also use it, and it actually prolongs if there are any tendencies of dementia or Alzheimer's in your family. This can also help to delay those tendencies or the symptoms to stop. There's also attention and concentration gains that you can use to make your attention and focus span a bit longer and a bit longer as you build on it. However, as my previous colleagues mentioned, is that you have been writing exams for the past 11 and a half years. Well, you don't in grade 1 to 3, but from thereafter. And the thing is, it's not new. It is just an important exam, but you have had the experience before. So rely on that. So some learning theories on the next slide are just what the theorists came up with of how people learn. But what all of this say is what we're supposed to do is scaffolding. So you build on previous knowledge, and that's what we did on each grade. So now in Matric, we're going to try and consolidate it. And as Dr. mentioned, is that we can't now cram everything of 12 years into one day or 1 month. So try and use what you can with what you have currently and just build on that. You have learned in the previous years, so count on that. So Classroom AI, you can use a quiz generator, lesson planner, automated grading, admin assistant, simulation magician, and your chatbot or tutors to help you at all time. And then also things that help you to personalize your learning. There are numerous of these, and one of the most known or best known ones are ChatGPT. So ask it to explain things for you in a different way. You can even ask it to explain it in different characters way. It's quite cool. But I don't want you guys to use a chatbot to then use a skill of it. I want you to have the skill. So for example, if you want the chatbot to write a poem for your spouse, for your partner, please use your own skills. It's just more special than to use it. Okay, so yeah, I'm giving you guys dating advice as well. So just, you can thank me later for that one. The effect of social media. So social media can be good, but there are statistics that say that about 76% of mental health support that is on TikTok currently is incorrect and unreliable. Therefore, please not use social media to study from it. However, there are some credible resources on there that you can use to support you in studying. For example, TED Talks, YouTube videos. Just see who created it. There's a credible author, and that they base their talks on research. But also, we don't want to create a place where you guys are exposed to screen time too much. We want you to take a break as well. So please not rely on the screen all the time, because that also overstimulates and overactivates the brain because of the blue light coming in from the screen, and then you don't rest enough to sleep enough. So just again, a little infographic on the what AI can do for you from admin, teaching and learning, student experiences, and how it can support you in that. There are some real world examples as well where you can use ChatGPT, translators, interventions, and all of these things. It's really amazing. It can make pictures for you if you are a visual student. It can get a video for you. It can explain things for you in a different way. So please use what we have to the best of your advantage. So on the next slide, there are more digital tools that are mentioned and programs to assist you with self-learning. Now on this slide, I mentioned two websites. So the first one is matric.co.za. That really has a couple of AI tools already in there that can help you to study. So please go and investigate that a bit further. The next one is gostudy.net. So gostudy.net is an interest questionnaire. Okay, so there's about 105 questions. Please do it after your exams, but it says what you are interested in. Then after it will say what category you tested the highest for. So let's say, for example, in art and crafts. And with that, then with the art and crafts, then you go into that category and it says what occupations are there in South Africa that are related to art and crafts. If you click on the occupation, it will open up what personal requirements and skills you need, but also what academic requirements and where you can study it in South Africa at South African colleges and universities. So it's really a very good site to go and look at to investigate your future more of where you can study, how you can study, and what you need to go study. On the next slide, there are just some of the icons. For example, ChatGPT, QuiltBot, Slides AI, they can create slides for you. Grammarly can make the wording more formal for you. YouTube has summaries in the form of videos. So there are many of these bots that you can use. AI lesson planner, quiz makers that can ask you that multiple choice questions after you studied the content, or even an AI presentation maker that can summarize your review in the form of a presentation where you can say add more visuals, add more videos, have more auditory with it, give me some slides, tips, and tricks. They can help you to understand it. Give me some real case scenarios where it was applied. People consume 3 times as much information daily as they did in the 1960s. So screen time can be good and it has a lot of advantages for us. However, 50% of people check their work email or their social media while they're supposed to be on vacation or resting. 61% of people felt jealous, depressed, sad, or annoyed after checking updates on social media accounts. And 81% of people admit to interrupting conversations, meal times, or playtime, or family time when they check their social media account. So please use it because also 73% of people believe their use of electronic devices contributed to stress in their lives. And we want to reduce your stress, especially at this time of life. So I have 2 slides left. So to conclude, how exposure to blue light is bad for our brain. So as we can see, it actually impacts our memory, that we don't sleep enough. It impacts our gut because we look holistically at the person. It's bad for our eyes, as Dr. De Silva mentioned. And then you also don't sleep enough. So please have spaced repetition when you learn. Please use active recalling and test yourself frequently on the content that you have learned in different ways. Then look at elaborating integration of the different techniques that we have mentioned today that you can remember the work the best and most efficient way possible. But please don't be dependent on an AI. Use it to support you in your studying. Please use the techniques that was mentioned today from Yokes earlier to Dr. De Silva's information. Look holistically at the study material. So how are you feeling as a person? Are you calm? Because in the calm way, you're going to study the best. If an angry dog runs behind you, you're not going to remember your maths, your history, your life sciences. You're going to remember, I have to run away from a dog. So when you are stressed, the pressure can actually decrease your mark and make you forget. So therefore, parents, please don't put more pressure on your children. They know that this is an important exam. They are aware of it. However, please support them and be their best fan to help them through this time by asking them did they eat and all of the tips that Dr. De Silva gave. Thank you so much, Danica. I'll hand over now to you for the Q&A session.
Thank you so very much to our wonderful speakers for sharing such enlightening and insightful information. Okay, we will now head right into our Q&A chat box, our Q&A session. We do have a couple of minutes available to us. Please do pop any questions that you might have for our speakers. Okay, I see I've got one here for Dr. Genevieve. It reads, how do you help reduce panic attacks on the day of exams? Thank you, Dr. Jane.
Thank you so much for that question. I do think panic attacks are already quite challenging to work through. And so it's not something that we take lightly. But just some advice or some tips that we can put into place. The first thing we need to understand is with a panic attack, our defense system has gone into overdrive and hyperdrive. Panic attacks are usually linked with anxiety. And so anxiety is a base root of fear. And so trying to understand what the fear is that maybe your child or you're experiencing on that day of exam is a really helpful thing well in advance. And so even in this time working up towards exams, perhaps maybe speaking about some of your child's worries or your worries with somebody. What is it that they're thinking about when they are entering the exam? What is it that they're afraid of or nervous at? A lot of the times our mind has told us something like, I can't do this. I'm going to forget everything. If I fail this, my life is over. I'll never get a job. I'll never get into university. And this all or nothing thinking, this always and never, is actually a cognitive distortion. It's not true, but our mind is telling us that this is true. And in that moment, it becomes such a reality to us. We then have to protect ourselves from a reality that isn't a reality in the present moment. So there's a lot of things that go in under the surface for the mind, that if you have time now and you know the panic attacks come on the day of exam, maybe help your child see somebody in the right now running up to exams to be able to talk through their worries, their fears, and their anxieties. But if it comes to the day of the exam, what would be really helpful is if we've already got a plan and we're working the plan, we trust the plan and we trust the process and we work through this. If we have been able to use the tips given today, where studying has been done, review has been done, and we've been working towards putting our knowledge and skills into our long-term memory as opposed to just cramming it into our short-term memory, already that is something that would create a scaffolding to be able to give your child confidence in, I have worked my best up until this point. I've done a test, retest, and I can see already what I know. So it builds confidence already knowing that I've got this and I've done this. So we can use that to create that sort of scaffolding. Then something that I would suggest is on the day of the exam, build it into the routine working up to the exams and as part of the planning process that we don't quickly review before the exam. And I know for a lot of people, we want to quickly review and refresh to make sure we don't forget those last things. But the problem with cramming, and already that was said with the Jogini right in the beginning, is that when we cram, we actually interfere with the long-term memory and our brain shifts focus into what have we just put in versus what we already know. And so it's really difficult, but something to introduce and something to hold on to is don't cram the morning of. Trust your long-term memory. When we've gone to bed at night, our brain then puts everything into the long-term stores and sorts it out for us. And so in the morning, get up, have a good breakfast, do some deep breathing, maybe do some yoga, doing some relaxing exercises, positive affirmations, so that we go into the exam ready, positive, and confident, as opposed to stressed out, trying to cram in quickly and trying to grasp at straws. And so the plan in advance, speaking to somebody in advance to understand why the mind is running down this way, and then having those relaxation practices on the morning of the exam can be really helpful. And so, yeah, your breathing is really important, being able to ground yourself in the moment, bring yourself back to the now and the reality, and then being able to manage the mind are important parts of being able to deal with panic attacks. So I hope that's helpful. I'm not sure if maybe somebody else wants to comment on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Genevieve. That was a lovely answer. We do have a question here for Jean-Pierre. If you could please join me on screen. It's from Eugene. With regards to the study approach, is it not too late, or is it ever too late to change now to align to a new learning style?
So I think it's never too late. It's never too late. But I do think please not try and change a complete wheel at this moment. You have a wheel, you have a basis of how to study currently. So now try and adapt and edit it a bit. Try and add something extra or to change a bit here or there. But don't go and completely change your whole study method now, because with change, anxiety can come. And with that, then again, it can just cause more anxiety upon the exam. Anxiety currently, and then you might forget the work because of the anxiety that you caused because of changing your study skills. So rather, I would say take your basis of how you usually studied and just see if you can add something to it or change something small or edit a bit for now, and then you can change a bit more and experiment with it a bit more later, like during the holidays and so on, before you go to university or study further. And there you can then again find your new way of studying and change it then completely. But for now, please keep the basis the same. I think that will then help you, because you have passed until here, you got here somehow. So use those techniques and just maybe add some extra on here or there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, JP. We do have a question here for Jogini. If you could please join me on screen. It reads, how, in your opinion, would you start creating good boundaries, especially in households that are super busy and loud? Thank you.
Good boundaries is not just something that we think about when we're looking at a study schedule, but it's a critical skill in life for anyone at any age, particularly adolescents, young adults. It's also something that many people struggle with. So negotiating boundaries in a disruptive home environment requires clear communication, flexibility, and assertiveness. So when we're talking about clear communication, it's about communicating your needs. Explain to your family or your housemates why you need focused time for studying. Be specific about when and how long you need uninterrupted time. I have an exam coming up. I would need between 6 to 8 p.m. today to concentrate. Can I please just ask for support in that time? When we say set clear boundaries, that's quite vague. So setting clear boundaries is not just about space, but also about time. This might mean you need to create a do not disturb sign, and that might be helpful to place on your room door. And for example, that could be during my study time, I will be in my room with the door closed and the sign will be on. If it is urgent, please knock. If not, I'll be out at 8 p.m. Boundaries is also something that requires you to reflect internally. What is it that you need, and to find comfort in voicing it, even if your voice is shaking. And this speaks into spaces outside of study plans or study environments. Create a shared schedule. So this might be helpful if there's a home with many other members and many other learners as well. So while everyone is busy, this allows everyone to understand what time will be for certain activities, and that would include your study hours. So let's plan quiet time in the evenings when I'm studying, or we can arrange louder activities during certain hours of the day. Use visual cues. Like I mentioned, a sign is important and it can ease the communication to say that studying is in progress, but it's very important to compromise and be flexible. Each of us need to know when our energies are higher. When our energies are higher, it will be easy for us to focus and concentrate. So that is the times where we want to capitalize on. However, when we are sharing space with many other people, we need to be flexible. So maybe when the kids are awake and they're younger kids and they are energetic and they move and they're loud, it is impossible to ask younger kids or expect younger kids to be quiet. In times like that, maybe we know what their sleep schedules are, and we will wake up 2 hours earlier, or we will go to bed 2 hours after, just to have that space. So everyone's home is a unique setting, and we need to reflect on what it is we need, but what are we working with? And with what we're working with, how can we collaborate to have an effective plan? Thanks, Danica.
Thank you so much, Yogs. That was a really lovely answer, and I think everybody will take something away from that. Okay, so we have run out of time, unfortunately, and we've come to the end of our live Q&A session. But if we did not answer any of your questions, or if you'd like one of our panelists to get in touch with you, please do leave your email address and your query in the chat box, and our admissions team will be in contact shortly. Please do follow us on our various social media channels to stay up to date on upcoming events, program launches, and updates to see the recording to this webinar. Once again, I'd like to thank our attendees and our panelists for joining us this morning, and we hope you have a wonderful day further. Thank you.